Welcome everyone in a new episode of the Cyber Corner podcast. It's been a while, and basically today I have a fabulous profile, and I'm just a honor just to join me in a new episode when we're gonna talk about something that I received a lot of messages about, which is careers in cybersecurity and the revolution in cybersecurity and the jobs, especially when we're talking about the AI and sometimes people talking about some jobs disappeared, another jobs just appear. So we're gonna understand all the clear picture with Michael Gibbs. Michael, thank you so much for accepting the invitation again. It's a pleasure to have you here. And yeah, I mean, Michael, like I posted a form on my LinkedIn about this topic and I got thousands of questions. So I just selected, the questions that I can say the most interesting ones, and I'm super excited to hear your answers about that. So first of all, Michael, if you can introduce yourself more for the audience and what you're doing globally.
Thank you so much, Mohammed. So my name's Mike Gibbs. I'm the CEO of Gold Cloud Careers, and I run an architecture training institute where we train cloud architects, we train enterprise architects, we train security architects, we train AI architects. Ever since I left my medical background 25 years ago, I'm something called a nurse practitioner in the US, which is a nurse that can do surgery, has their own office, about 7 years of school. And I had that. And when I moved into tech, because tech was my love, I fell into architecture because architecture and medicine were nearly the same. Somebody would come to us with a problem, we would examine the evidence, we'd make a diagnosis and come up with a plan. And when I found, how to architect things, it was just like, how do you take care of a patient? I fell in love with it. And I started that career about 25 years ago. I was a principal architect or above for 23 of those years. And about 20 years ago, I started training my first person. And that person thrived. They went on to the best tech companies, and then I started coaching more. At this point, I've trained security architects, cloud architects, enterprise architects, AI architects that work at every company you can think of in every country in the world. Companies like Apple, Amazon, Cisco, Google, IBM, Accenture, Deloitte, KPMG, Capgemini, PricewaterhouseCoopers, banks like JP Morgan Chase Bank, Barclays Bank, PNC Bank, security companies like Palo Alto, Cisco, Zscaler, Netspoke. So all kinds of companies. This has been the best. It's been the best retirement job of my life. I love what I've done, and it's just what I just enjoy is training the next generation of architects.
Amazing background. And Michael, I can say that you are one of the favorite profiles for me in the LinkedIn. When I check your profile, some resources, there are free resources for security, for many actual like field in IT. And here comes the question. Why you're doing what you're doing, because posting some free resources and that, it's so cool. So yeah, what is the reason behind it?
So here's the reason why. There's actually a few reasons. One is when I left tech, or left healthcare into tech, I
Yeah.
spent a fortune. I borrowed money from my father-in-law. I borrowed money from my brother-in-law. I took loans, and it cost as much as a new Mercedes when I started networking. And then when I was done that, I was able to go so far. And then I found what the difference was the next set of skills. It was the MBA, it was the business acumen, it was the leadership, it was the executive presence. Those were the things that changed your career. Anyway, it took about $300,000 to get an education to do that. And it paid for itself many times over. But I retired a few years ago and I thought, how could I train people to do exactly what I did without needing to go to multiple master's degrees? Because when you do that, 80% is irrelevant, but only 20%. And how could you create an academy? What started the free training, I can tell you, is just this. We're about 5 years ago now. What happened is I was training a nice young man. His name was Nathan. And Nathan was going to get AWS certified. So what I did is I bought him three of the best-selling AWS courses that were out there at the time. And I told him and his father that I'd spend 4 hours mentoring him every Friday on real cloud computing. Well, Nathan called me back after 3 days and he said, I've watched all these courses and I set up an EC2 instance and a virtual machine. And I said, great, Nathan, tell me what is an EC2 instance? And he said, it's an EC2 instance. I said, tell me how you would size an EC2 instance in terms of CPU cores and DRAM. He said it wasn't covered in any of these courses. And I said, how would you look at the storage performance? And how do you determine what kind of storage? And he said, it wasn't covered in there. It was only the name of a service and how to do it. Now, I couldn't believe it. And I said to this young man, and he's a very smart man, and he's now in a very big tech role. But I said to him, I said, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to watch these videos. And if I watch these videos, these courses, and it's all in there, I'm going to tell your father, you know what? I just don't have the time to train you. Or if we always watch these videos and it's literally as bad as you say, here's what we're going to do. We're going to write a book on passing the AWS solutions architect, and then we're going to give it away. Now, I had some other AWS training that we were doing, and I started working with some groups in Africa, some groups in Cameroon, and some other groups, and I saw how much the demand was, and I saw how hard it was. So then I started giving away free certifications. So, and the third part of the certification piece was, and we're doing something very differently in this next free boot camp, is skills get you hired, not the certifications. And people are spending money on certifications, and it leaves almost no money for skill development. And I remember my CISSP boot camp was $5,000. I know the CCIE was over $20,000. I was close to $40,000. And I know what it costs, and nobody needs to spend that. So I make that free. And then when we do have paid training programs, what we pair people is for the whole job. So when I train people to be a security architect, there's about 800 hours of training in how to be a security architect. It covers the business skills, the executive skills, the technical skills, all of the skills. And students then stay in that program until the day they're hired. And literally speaking, that's why all of our students end up in great jobs. And we do that, and we do it for our cost. So we either have free things that we do to offer the entire world, or we have complete career programs, which we work on, and that's what we do. But my goal, I had a great career. I was able to retire when I was 34 years old. I really was. I did consulting because I loved it. But the key is I want everybody to have that life. These tech careers, some of them have such opportunity. And they're all the hidden ones that nobody knows about. And they're usually the architecture careers. So that's what I've been doing. I've been preparing the next generation of architects.
And really, this is so inspiring. And guys, later I'm gonna just put all the links, of Michael, and all his resources. He has again a fabulous resources, and they're really super updated when it comes, to courses, free courses, and even me. I checked the content, and it's literally helps a lot the community. And right now, come to the core question, which is when we talk about careers in a cybersecurity or, generally security careers. Um, let's talk about the future of security careers. So basically, right now, why these careers pay 2 or 3 times offer security careers, and what are the changes? Because we find some profiles really gonna disappear, or maybe right now in a cybersecurity we need the integration of other technologies like AI or something. So what is the revolution right now in security careers?
So, and here's what the change has been over the decades. So when I started, and if I give you the history, I think it'll tell you where people are going. When I started, the technology didn't work. A 56K lease line between New York and Delhi, India was $5,000 a month. The routers had 25 megahertz CPUs on them. And if the routes got too many routes got in the routing tables, the routers would crash. So in those days, what we needed was deeply, deeply, deeply technical. That's where the CCIE came out of, which was my actual intro to networking. So that's where we had those deeply technical people. Now, at the time, Cisco only wanted to sell to intelligent people. And I can literally tell you, I remember the day they said, we need to start making our products easier to work so other people can use it. So we went from needing deeply technical people that knew all the what, the where, the why, and the how. Systems got easy, and then we started hiring people that just knew how to click a bunch of boxes. They knew how to configure a firewall rule. They knew how to, but they didn't know why.
Mm.
The problem is, and why those how-to careers are going, the admin roles, those technician-like roles are, AI can do all of that. AI can write a Python script. AI can write a Bash shell script. So that hands-on stuff, and then I'll get into the World Economic Forum with you if you want. Those hands-on things are gone. Which is why years ago I stopped training people for intro-level roles, and I started training them for senior roles, because there's always a gap of architects. They're the hardest people to hire, and no matter what. Plus, if you deal with things like enterprise architects, 50% of us didn't come from a tech background because of the big business. So there is that side. So the how-to people, honestly, are in trouble. Now, what can AI do? It can't be the world's greatest expert. So if you give me an engineer that has extraordinary experience with the various authentication mechanisms in IAM, whether it be a fingerprint, whether it be an iris, whether it be a retina, whether it be, well, voice would be probably terrible in the world of AI, but whether it be any of these systems, and they can evaluate the trade-offs, the strengths and weaknesses of each approach and guide a client, that person is irreplaceable. Why? They have deep knowledge. Because what does AI not know how to do? AI cannot evaluate trade-offs. AI cannot act with incomplete information like an expert can. AI cannot judge, or an AI can't get a group of stakeholders to agree. AI can't sell a $50 million security architecture. So anything in that world can't be done by AI. And I can show you there's a list of skills that the World Economic Forum that shows of the past and the future, and then I'll map them out to the jobs of the future if you want. But I actually think this one's going to be pretty helpful to you. So if we actually go to this recent survey, this isn't not full size, from the World Economic Forum. Here's what I want you to see. So we have the skills of the past. And the skills of the past include things like, hands-on things, sensory processing things to check things. Programming is a skill of the past. I love to say teaching and mentoring, but that's changing to people like you and I that speak multiple languages so we can communicate with the wider audiences. AI can start doing this stuff. But what can't AI do? Well, right now we still need people to focus on AI and big data. So in any roles, those are safe for a while. But if we look at what's specific to these other roles, creative thinking, how creative can you be to solve a security problem or a business problem? Can you lead an organization and convince the stakeholders to spend $100 million on your security architecture? That it takes leadership and influence. Solving problems analytically. We've got these three different types of firewalls that all run these different types of behavioral anomaly algorithms. Given our traffic, we feel this one is best. That's analytical thinking. The ability to see the impact of a change on one part of the system on another. And you start thinking about talent management. These are the skills of the future. So what jobs have them? Well, in security, there's a couple of them. The security architect, obviously, because that's the whole part of their job. The security sales rep, obviously. The security sales engineer, obviously. Now, let's talk about the penetration tester. A good ethical hacker that walks in and does some social engineering and finds weaknesses, that person can't be replaced. The person that runs scripts can be replaced by comparison. So it's all about the hands-on how-to stuff. We just don't need that. So we still need really great ethical hackers. And that changes, though, as we go to the cloud, because we can't necessarily do the kind of deep penetration testing we want on the cloud, but we can off the cloud. But we still need those people, especially people with expertise in evaluating human weaknesses. So that's why I've told people years ago to get out of engineering. In fact, you may not know, we used to have a cloud engineering program.
Uh,
And
yeah, sorry, Mike, for interruption, but really something come to my mind, and it's a
yeah,
question. Um, right now, when we talk about pen testers, as a profile, is that a profile can fully be automated? Like, can we just go for some tools like automate the wall penetration test? Is that possible? Do you see it?
uh, everything other than the human element.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's the secret of the jobs of the future. It is the human element. Let's face it. I can use AI to create a script that's going to test everything, prove everything, kick off a whole bunch of tools. That's not a big deal. But
Mm.
that one person that's going to come in, that's going to say something to the receptionist, that's going to get them to give them extra options, that's going to walk through the building and say, with too many sticky notes with things on here, I found the password book on this desk. That level of thing, that's the only people that survive. The person that has to really do complicated things, which is why architects, we don't touch anything. We design it. That's all stakeholders, conversations. We're good. Sales reps, security
Mhm.
salespeople, all that's good. And all that can't be automated. So it all depends on where you're at.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, really super interesting answer to be honest, because I got that question a lot from my students, and yeah, when it comes when they think about their future profile, they ask that do we just or starting like a career as a penetration tester, is that going to be interesting or going to be fully automated? So they have a lot of those kind of questions. And even me, like I've been a mentor instructor, and even like I taught some engineering students. So this is lead us to the next question, which is when we talk about the skills, what is the difference right now about the future, and why security professors may need new or different skills? As a professor, as someone who is mentoring people, try to help them, educating them, what are the skills right now that I really need, the different new one, that make the difference when it comes, to mentor people and educating them?
So if we're talking about what are the skills when I hire someone, I'm looking for someone that sees the holistic nature of it. So
Mhm.
I come from a network security background. That's where I started. I started in the network. I was a principal network architect, security, and it was all in the network. But that's only one domain of security. So when we start thinking of the big picture, we have a hard time with people that can see the big picture. Can they say, okay, on the network, we've got these options. We can micro segment on the network. We can do it with VLANs at layer 2. We can do it layer 3 with an ACL. We can rate limit. We can determine who can get on the network. We can determine whose traffic gets on the network, how we shape it, what have you, how we prioritize what gets through. So we can think of that. But I still want that person at the same time to be able to think of my data. Okay, how do I protect my data? Do I get rid of data that we no longer need? Okay, great. So data lifecycle management. Do we get into data privacy? Things like tokenization, obfuscation, for example, anonymization, pseudonymization. Do we get into data encryption? And if so, what kind of encryption? How do we manage the keys? Do we catalog the data? What kind of data loss prevention tools? So I'm looking for someone that understands all the domains. So so whether it's application security, what goes into secure development life cycles, for example, what goes into identity, what goes into this, that whole picture, that person is truly invaluable, especially when that person understands the human element and how to work with the human element and how to change the culture around the human element. And that's why some jobs are much higher paying than the others. Because are you focused on one piece? And that's great to focus on one piece. Or are you changing the entire organization? That kind of determines that. In architecture worlds, we focus on how do we change that entire organization, how we protect the people, how do we protect the company, how do we protect its assets, how do we protect the customers, as opposed to focusing on any one thing. Because that way, we can speak strategy. We can say, okay, if we do this, that's going to help here and hurt here. And that's all the stuff that AI can't do.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And talking about what the kind of tasks that AI can do, right now we're talking about those, because when we're talking about, for example, an iteration test, we know that some tasks they can be automated. But right now, let's talk about I can say the things that can be automated by AI and the tasks that they can be automated by AI. We know that like not all the tasks can be automated. This is not
Yeah.
logical. Yeah. So what are they? What are the things that can be, or the tasks that can be automated, and the other that they can be?
Okay, so I actually think a lot more of the tasks can be automated than most people. So
Mhm.
if I look at what goes on security, what can't be automated?
Yeah.
Speaking to the executives to understand where the business is going.
Yeah.
Because if we don't know where the business is going, we can't create a strategy to protect it. We might kill the business in the process by blocking things. So there's that. What can't be automated is communicating with the stakeholders, looking at the various stakeholders, whether they be various components of the business, the application, the people, the network people, and bringing them together to something. That
Mhm.
can't be automated. What can't be automated is saying, wow, this AWS web application firewall, boy, that's nice and simple to use. And we can subscribe to third party signature protection. But what happens if we have an unknown anomaly? By comparison, if we use the Cisco WAF or a Palo Alto WAF, not only do we have all those layer 7 capabilities, but we've got AI that's analyzing the behavior, and therefore it might stop attacks that it's never seen in real time. Given our business risks, we can't afford to use the AWS one. So that kind of trade off evaluation can't be done. Now, being able to analyze and make a recommendation.
Mhm.
Of the two different types of architectures we could choose here, the defense in depth versus zero trust, because your organization is across 3 clouds, 2 co-location providers, 2 data centers, and much of your is exposed to the internet, we feel a zero trust strategy makes more sense. So that can't be done. So giving the presentation to convince the team to invest, that can't be done. So can a firewall rule be automated? Yes. Can configuring an IAM system be automated? 100% yes. So any of the doing, and think every doing task, I think ultimately all of that gets automated. And ultimately, I think even incident response gets partially automated too, especially with what we have. So I think the tech piece gets automated. And why do I say this? Now, as a tech futurist, and I worked as a tech strategist for many tech companies for many years, one of the things we look at is where's the money coming from and where is it? Now, I remember building out the internet. There was a lot of money real quick. Then I saw cloud computing and that looked like a whole lot of wasteful spending real quick. And some companies got something for it and some didn't. Security, they never spent enough money on security because not all the security people had the sales skills and the business acumen to convince people why they needed it. AI, I mean, the US government just found a $500 billion investment like that. Look at what's going on in Dubai, for example, and other parts of the Middle East. So look at the investment there. Look at China, look at India, look at everywhere that's in an arms race effectively to see who can have the best AI first. And then we look at companies like OpenAI getting $100 billion investment here or there, and all the Oracle's getting these hundreds of billions of dollars investment. I've never seen $1 trillion get spent so fast.
Yeah.
And when you see that, and what's the goal? To make it that I can write a program by saying I need a new website that's going to do X, Y, Z factors, and then the code's just going to generate it. So I think most of the tech stuff is going to be done. To me, it's going to be the professional judgment that's left and the art of the various technology careers,
Yeah.
less the science.
Yeah, totally. And I'm totally agree when it comes about dealing with companies, to invest in cybersecurity. This is I can't imagine this is gonna be automated because each company has their needs, each company has their environment, and I think like even the way of communication. So and even like I'm saying that even in penetration test itself, when it comes to when it comes to judge the company after the penetration itself, and when we talk about the report, I think this is must be human because it's really, yeah. I mean, because I think like penetration tests, when it comes to judge the company and try to convince them about their mistakes, or the things that they have to fix, it's really tough. So it must be human, totally.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So coming right now about the areas of cybersecurity, talking about the SOC, hunting, vulnerability management. Um, are most impacted by AI? I mean, are because the question, or the core question is sometimes, for example, when we're talking about SOC, we know that it exists a lot of SOCs tool that they say we implemented AI, in our tools. But some people they look that differently and they're gonna be like, this is only commercial, this is we are not seeing, for example, SOC really impacted by AI models. It's not adding anything true. So how really much this kind of jobs or the areas of cybersecurity are impacted by AI?
Well, we have to look at the cycle and going through these things and where the money typically flows. And money typically goes towards things that are going to make more money.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is, and it affects the tech careers that are out there. If if I'm the CEO of a business, and I am, and I've got 2 opportunities to invest in. Opportunity A uses AI and it enhances my sales process somehow, and it brings in 20% more revenue. Opportunity B is I have a more secure environment with the same amount of money that I could have invested in the AI. So, from a CEO excitement perspective, who's responsible to delivering shareholder results, security's not the first place. Now, I've never had a problem selling security services in my entire life, and here's the reason why. I approach every architecture as a business executive. And when I walk into a business and I first speak with the executives and I identify the assets they have, and I truly understand the risk of those assets, the kind of clients I'm working with, they could have 100, 200, $300 million risk exposure or greater. And when we see that $200 to $300 risk exposure, then we can look at risk mitigation plans. What does it cost to transfer the risk to, say, an insurance company? What does it cost to mitigate it with this control? What does it cost to mitigate it with this control? And then we prioritize. That's when we're there. So most of the money right now that's going on in AI investment is actually to improve business operations. Now you're seeing a little here. You're seeing it in Siemens source systems. You're seeing it in context aware IAM. You're seeing it, but right now the people haven't focused as much as their effort there. Now, where do we see Cisco going? Where do we see Checkpoint going? Where do we see Fortinet going and Palo Alto going? I'd expect to see a lot more AI investments in them. And I think we also have to realize that the shortage of workforce in cybersecurity right now. World Economic Forum pointed to about a 5.5 million person shortage globally, about a quarter of a million people in the United States. And it's not like we don't have a surplus of certified people. We have a shortage of capable people. And because of that, right now we're not really focused on as much of solving that problem right now as we are, how do I make more money out of AI? But we'll get to it. We'll solve it. We saw it on the network side. The network was the most complicated part of the entire equation. And even that stuff's getting much more automated, and security is going to go there too. But still, the security is fairly complicated, and there's almost no one that knows security, and you have to actually know security to actually solve problems in security. So I think we got a couple more years there, but it's coming.
Yeah. And right now, when we talk about young professionals, so how they can prepare to work effectively alongside AI driven, and also another questions, because I really can't, escape that. Um, let's talk also about Go Cloud and what you are offering there. Because I know that you're doing a great job about it. So yeah, the first one, how can younger professional work with this kind of AI tools and the revolution that we are seeing, and what you offer in Go Cloud?
So let's talk about how young people can be successful. So I did things differently when I was young. Let's start with that part of it. When I went into tech, I had a bit of a problem. I had a very high paid job.
Mhm.
I had a medical professional job, and I did not have the ability to go from a very high paid job, top 5%, pay that you would get in the United States, and then take an intro level technology pay. I had a mortgage, I had expenses, I had real world challenges. So I had to earn as much as a physician would earn in tech as my first tech job. So how did I approach that? And I approached it differently. Every person I told me said, Mike, you need to start in help desk. Mike, you need this admin role. You need this, you need this. And I said, why? And they said, how are you going to learn networking unless you do that stuff? And I said, I'm going to ask you the other question. Do you want to tell me how Linux is going to teach me networking? How am I going to learn BGP from Linux? How am I going to learn MPLS traffic engineering from Linux? And no one could give me an answer to that. So I said, I am going to focus on being great in networking. So instead of focusing on the junior networking role, what did I do? I picked the hardest certification out there, the CCIE, back when 3 million people attempted it and only 6,000 people passed it. And I said, I'm going to build an 8-hour day study plan. And I did. And I literally took the CCIE 9 months later. Now I invested a lot in training. To be fair, I did. And I had a better paying job in tech than I previously had from internal medicine as my first job. And then a year later, I doubled my salary and something changed. So the key is to remember that there are no rules. We can move into a senior role or we can move into a junior role. For example, I'll give you Bellwinder, who was a stay-at-home mom whose first job was at Microsoft as a solutions architect. Coyote was a college student whose first job is at AWS as a solutions architect. Daniel was a 20-year-old first job at JP Morgan Chase as a solutions architect. Delroy Batt, for example, was an emergency medical technician, a paramedic without the medications they could prescribe. And his first job after us was at CDW as a security architect. So the point is this: if you train to be great, and if you train to have all the skills of somebody that's already been in the job for 5 years, you'll get the job of somebody that's already been in the job in 5 years. And guess what? Once you start getting into those jobs where professional judgment is involved, no one can ever replace you. And of the jobs that pay the most, if we look globally, they're jobs that are art and science combined together. It's a physician, which is an art and science. It's an attorney. It is an executive strategist. It is a strategy consultant. And what is the difference between the highest tech paid roles and the lowest tech paid roles, realistically speaking? What is it that makes an architect earn 2 to 3 times more than the engineer? Well, it's the art skills. So you give me any great security professional, pre-sales security engineer, what have you, and all of a sudden I can teach them storytelling and visioning, where they can walk into an organization, they can tell a story about how they protected another organization, and a $10 million purchase order shows up, and all of a sudden you deliver excellent security to that company, and it's great. They tell their friends, and all of a sudden you've got a better job. It's the ability to walk in and communicate with stakeholders across an entire company, learn their business needs, and get them to say yes. That determines, yes, okay, we'll adopt this security architecture versus no, and then they get hacked. It's the ability to look and say, wait a second. We have almost no money right now that we can change, but you know what? We can micro segment on the network. We can rate limit on the network. The features are already there. We can traffic shape to make sure that the critical traffic goes before the non-critical, and therefore we can do that. We can add admission control, so when Joey plugs in and Joey's not allowed, he or she doesn't get on. And when we start adding that with that executive presence to walk in, command a room, and get people to see our things, that's when our careers typically change. So believe it or not, when you actually look at what impacts tech careers the most, what impacts tech salaries the most, it's actually not the tech skills. It's actually more of the executive skills.
Yeah, yeah, totally right. I mean, fabulous conversation, to be honest. I can't really get enough. Michael, I want to really thank you so much for this amazing conversation. And absolutely, if you want to add anything, absolutely the doors is open. And maybe like another request is what is I mean the golden advice that you give for the people that they want to make an IT career or maybe a cybersecurity career. What is that really golden advice that you got through your amazing career, and you be like, I can't never uh really forget this advice. What is it?
So there were two things, actually. Two things that shaped my life. One thing which I did very differently than others, and I want everybody to do differently. And the other thing was what changed my life, and I just want you to know. So the first thing is focus. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. If I'm a security professional, I'm going to learn security. And that means I may figure out what my domain is, and I'm going to focus on security, focus on security, focus on security. I'm not going to learn the code, no matter how much fun it is. I'm not going to learn how to do anything else. I'm going to focus 100% of my training time on security. I've interviewed 6,000 people for positions in the last 25 years. And most people don't have enough of the skills for the job they want. They've got a lot of skills. They worked hard to develop a lot of skills, but they have 40% of the skills in 10 different careers. Now, here's the problem with that. They don't have enough of the skills for any one career. And AI is about 70% accurate at what it does, and they're about 40% accurate in 7 different careers. So master one. The second thing was, I had a manager in 2003, and he said, Mike, do you know the difference between a basic solutions architect and an executive? And when he mentioned the executive, he also included pay. And in his day, he said the difference between a $150,000 sales engineer and a $300,000 architect. And I said, please tell me. And he said, Mike, he said, I'm telling you this because you're super technical. It's not how technical you are. That gets you only so far. It's actually the impact you can make. And the impact you can make is related to your leadership skills. How big of a team can you follow? Your business acumen, how much you can advise the client to be able to protect their organization. Your ability to see the big picture, not the one thing you want to look at, Mike, which is the network security, but the entire picture of everything that goes along, from the way the employees do their jobs to the devices they're using. And he said, when you start adding that, you tune up your presence, your executive presence, presentation skills. He said, I promise you will be in an executive role. And guess what? I did that. I went and got an MBA. I went and got executive training. And as soon as it was done, I was in the executive role. And that's honestly how I've spent the last part of my career, teaching people the actual technical skills they need, the focused technical skills, and then adding all the executive skills. That's where we do things that are different, because it's those executive skills that really build your career.
Thank you again, guys. The fabulous Michael Gibbs. Thank you so much for all the thoughts that you shared. Absolutely, guys. I'm gonna put all the links, to Michael platforms. I believe that he really deserves a follow. He's doing a great job on LinkedIn and globally in his platform. Michael, thank you so much again for being our guest. And absolutely, I hope that we can see you in any other podcast episode because the conversation with you is super rich and it can never end. Thank you so much, Michael.
So it's an honor to be here. Obviously, you can see my things. And if you want to come back, just ask. I'm always happy to come back.
Thank you so much.